A fog-shrouded manor looms in the Sussex night, its gas lamps flickering like eyes hiding secrets. Inside, a card game turns deadly. Sir Reginald Blackwood, a legendary detective, collapses, poisoned. His final breath a gasp of betrayal. Who among the elegant guests? His cunning wife? A scheming partner? A mysterious beauty? A bitter rival? Or his desperate son? Dealt the fatal hand. As shadows dance and motives unravel, one question burns. Can Hercule Poirot's little grey cells pierce the mist of deceit to catch a killer before they strike again? Chapter 1. The Gathering Storm. The mist clung to the rolling hills of Sussex like a ghostly veil, wrapping Blackwood Manor in a silence so profound it seemed the world held its breath. It was October 15th, 1935, and the grand estate, with its ivy-clad towers and mullioned windows, stood as a monument to an older England, its gas lamps flickering like hesitant stars against the encroaching dusk. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke, and the distant cry of an owl pierced the stillness, a harbinger of the night's grim events. Within those ancient walls, a gathering was underway, one that promised not just revelry, but a reckoning. Sir Reginald Blackwood, the retired Scotland Yard inspector, whose name was synonymous with relentless justice, had summoned a select few to his opulent drawing room for what he cryptically called the fatal game, a night of cards where stakes transcended mere coin and ventured into the currency of secrets. The drawing room itself was a study in grandeur, its oak-panelled walls adorned with portraits of stern ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow every movement. A crystal chandelier cast prismatic light across the polished mahogany table at the room's center, where a deck of cards lay waiting, their edges worn from countless evenings of play. The fire in the hearth crackled, casting long shadows that danced like spectres across the Persian rugs. Sir Reginald, a turmoil. She offered a tight smile as she handed a glass to her husband, her fingers lingering on the crystal, as if reluctant to let it go. "Reginald, must you be so dramatic?" she chided softly, though her voice carried an edge, like a blade wrapped in velvet. Beside her sat Edmund Thorne, Sir Reginald's business partner, a lean man with hawkish features and a perpetual air of calculation. His fingers toyed with a gold pocket watch, its ticking barely audible over the crackle of the fire. Thorne's wealth stemmed from joint ventures with Sir Reginald, but whispers of strained relations had reached the manor's servants. His thin lips curled into a faint smile as he accepted his drink, though his eyes remained fixed on the cards, as if reading omens in their arrangement. Across from him was Miss Elaine Hargrove, a houseguest whose arrival had sparked murmurs among the staff. Her raven hair framed a face of striking beauty, the dark eyes holding a depth that suggested secrets too heavy to voice. She wore a sapphire dress that shimmered in the firelight, and her smile was coy, almost provocative, as she leaned forward to study her cards. "A game of truths, Sir Reginald?" she murmured, her voice low and melodic. How intriguing. Her past was a mystery, though rumours hinted at a scandal in London society that had driven her to seek refuge in the countryside. Inspector Graves, Sir Reginald's former colleague and rival at Scotland Yard, sat with a scowl etched into his weathered face. His broad shoulders strained against his tweed suit, and his fingers gripped his tumbler with unnecessary force. The two men had clashed years ago over a high-profile case, and Graves' presence tonight was as much a challenge as an obligation. "I prefer facts to games," he growled, his voice rough as gravel. "But I'll humour you, Blackwood." Completing the circle was Arthur Blackwood, Sir Reginald's son, a young man in his late 20s whose boyish features were marred by a pallor that spoke of sleepless nights. His cufflinks gleamed as he fidgeted, his hands betraying a nervous energy. Arthur had returned to the manor after months abroad, his gambling debts a poorly kept secret that strained his relationship with his father. "Let's get on with it," he muttered, glancing at the cards as if they held his salvation or his doom.
"Game!" he proclaimed, his eyes gleaming with an intensity that silenced the room. Each guest mirrored his gesture, their glasses clinking softly, a ritual sealing their participation in this peculiar rite. He sipped deeply, savoring the whiskey's burn, and the others followed suit, their expressions a tapestry of feigned enthusiasm and guarded suspicion. The first hand was dealt, the cards sliding across the table with a whisper of fate. Sir Reginald's voice carried over the soft rustle, narrating the rules of bridge with a fervor that suggested more than mere sport. "Each bid is a promise," he said, "and each play a revelation. Let us see who holds the winning hand tonight." The game progressed, the players' banter laced with barbs. Lady Victoria's laugh was too bright, Thorne's comments too sharp, Elaine's glances too knowing. Graves grumbled about luck, while Arthur's brow glistened with sweat. The clock on the mantel ticked toward 9, its chimes a solemn counterpoint to the rising stakes. Then calamity struck. Sir Reginald, mid-sentence, paused, his hand clutching his throat. His tumbler slipped from his grasp, shattering on the hardwood floor in a cascade of crystal and whiskey. A gasp tore from his lips, his face contorting in agony as he convulsed, his massive frame toppling from the chair. His eyes, wide with horror, locked onto the ceiling, as if seeing death itself descend. The room erupted into chaos. Lady Victoria screamed. Thorne leapt to his feet. Elaine froze. Graves barked orders to the servants, and Arthur stood paralyzed, his face ashen. "Poison!" Graves roared, kneeling beside the body, his fingers searching for a pulse that was no longer there. The acrid scent of cyanide hung in the air, unmistakable to a man of his experience. Jenkins, trembling, called for the doctor, but it was futile. Sir Reginald Blackwood, the indomitable inspector, was dead. The guests stood in a stunned semicircle, their cards abandoned on the table, the ace of spades glaring up like an accusation. The fire sputtered, casting grotesque shadows that seemed to mock the scene. Who among them had turned the evening's amusement into murder? The question lingered, heavy as the mist outside, drawing the mind into a labyrinth of own secrets. The cards, scattered across the table, seemed to mock their predicament, each one a potential clue, each suit a symbol of the motives swirling among them. As the servants lit more lamps, casting light on the grim tableau, the weight of the unknown settled over the room. The fatal game had begun in earnest, not with cards, but with lives. Somewhere among the elegance and deception, a killer lurked, their hand played, but not yet revealed. The night stretched ahead, promising answers, or further treachery. Chapter 2. The Arrival of the Little Belgian. The first light of dawn struggled through the persistent mist that enveloped Blackwood Manor, casting the estate in a pallid, ethereal glow that did little to dispel the night's lingering shadows. The Sussex countryside, usually vibrant with the hues of autumn, appeared muted and foreboding, as if nature itself mourned the passing of Sir Reginald Blackwood. By mid-morning, the gravel drive crunched under the tires of police vehicles, their sirens silent, but their presence a stark reminder of the tragedy unfolding. Uniformed constables, faces set in grim determination, had arrived from the nearest station, their boots leaving muddy imprints on the manicured lawns as they cordoned off the drawing room with yellow tape, a modern intrusion into the manor's timeless elegance. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked earth and the acrid undertone of cigar ash from the previous evening's chaos. Inside the conservatory, a glass-walled sanctuary filled with exotic ferns and blooming orchids,
The suspects had been herded together like reluctant players in a larger game. The room, with its wrought iron furniture and wicker chairs arranged in a loose semicircle, offered a fragile veneer of civility amid the tension. Sunlight filtered through the panes, dappling the faces of those assembled, revealing lines of fatigue and suspicion etched deep. Lady Victoria Blackwood sat primly on a chaise lounge, her emerald gown from the night before replaced by a simple black morning dress that did little to soften her sharp features. She dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, though her movements were mechanical and her green eyes remained. Dark eyes darted from face to face, a coy smile playing at her lips despite the circumstances, or perhaps because of them. Inspector Graves dominated the space, his broad frame filling a high-backed chair, his tweed suit bearing the marks of a sleepless night. He barked orders to the constables outside, his voice rough and authoritative. "Keep that room sealed. No one in or out until forensics arrives." Young Arthur Blackwood slumped in a corner, his face pale and drawn, his hands trembling as he lit a cigarette, the smoke curling like a question mark in the humid air. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken accusations, the conservatory's humid warmth amplifying the sense of confinement. The servants hovered at the periphery, Jenkins the butler, his silver hair impeccable despite the ordeal, ensuring tea was served on silver trays, though none touched it. The maids whispered in hushed tones, their eyes wide with the thrill and terror of scandal. Graves, assuming command of the preliminary inquiry, paced with the deliberate strides of a man accustomed to crisis. "This was no accident, ladies and gentlemen," he declared, his gravelly voice cutting through the murmurs like a knife. The whiskey was laced with cyanide, quick, odorless to the untrained nose, but deadly as they come. Sir Reginald ingested it during that damned toast of his. Someone in this room had access to the decanter, and I'll have the truth before the day's out. Murmurs rippled through the group. Lady Victoria's handkerchief fluttered to her lap. "Surely not one of us, Inspector. It must have been an intruder, or perhaps faulty liquor." Thorne shot her a glance, his eyes narrowing, while Elaine's smile faded into something more inscrutable. Arthur stubbed out his cigarette, his voice hoarse. Father had enemies, yes, but poison? In his own home? Graves snorted. Enemies aplenty from his yard days, but this was intimate, personal. We'll start with statements. Everyone accounts for their movements during the game. He turned to a constable, scribbling notes furiously. The investigation had begun in earnest, but the air hummed with the inefficiency of local police grappling with a case beyond their ken. Whispers of Scotland Yard's involvement circulated, but leather shoes, contrasting sharply with the disarray around him. His egg-shaped head was crowned by a neat parting, and his mustache, waxed to perfection, quivered with the intensity of his gaze. Beside him strode Captain Arthur Hastings, tall and military in bearing, his mustache a more modest affair, his face alight with the familiar mix of admiration and exasperation for his friend. Poirot had been vacationing in the nearby spa town of Tunbridge Wells, seeking the restorative waters for his delicate constitution, when an urgent telegram from the local chief inspector, acquainted with Poirot's exploits, had summoned him. The message was terse. Poisoning at Blackwood Manor. Expertise required. Discretion assured. Poirot removed his gloves with deliberate care, his eyes sweeping the room like a searchlight. "Bonjour, mes amis," he said, his Belgian accent precise and formal, laced with an undercurrent of authority that silenced the room. "It is with regret that I arrive under such circumstances. But Hercule Poirot, he does not ignore the call of duty when murder is afoot." Hastings, ever the loyal companion, nodded to the group. "Poirot was nearby, you see. The chief inspector thought his unique methods might prove invaluable." His British reserve masked a keen interest, his eyes noting the suspect's reactions. Victoria's arched eyebrow.
Thorne's calculating stare, Elaine's intrigued tilt of the head. Graves bristled, stepping forward. "This is a police matter, Monsieur Poirot. We don't need amateur theatrics." Poirot's eyes twinkled beneath his arched brows. "Amateur? Non, Inspector. Hercule Poirot is a professional of the mind. The little gray cells, they do not require badges. But I assure you, I come to assist, not to usurp." He turned to the group, his voice gaining a rhythmic cadence. "Mon ami Hastings, observe. The mist outside. It clings like suspicion. And here, in this conservatory of secrets, we have the players. Sir Reginald Blackwood, poisoned in a game of cards. Ah, but games, they reveal character. Motive, opportunity. The puzzle assembles itself, if one looks with a tremor in his voice. Untouched until Lady Victoria poured the drinks, sir. She insisted on doing it herself, as was her custom for special occasions. Sir Reginald always said it added to the ritual." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Insisted, you say? Interesting. And the whiskey? Imported, perhaps. A poison like cyanide, it dissolves readily but leaves traces." He summoned a constable to bag the decanter, his gloved fingers tracing the rim. There, amid the fingerprints, a peculiar smudge caught his eye. Not a full print, but a partial, smeared as if hastily wiped. "Ah, voilà. A clue, mon ami. Not the killer's hand, perhaps, but a sign of haste. The method is clear. Poison in the drink, administered during the toast. But the why, that is the heart of the matter." Hastings peered over his shoulder. Fingerprints could be anyone's. With all the handling, patience, Hastings. Order from chaos. Poirot straightened, his mind already whirring like a well-oiled mechanism. He interviewed the staff next, methodically. The maids confirmed no one entered the kitchen or sideboard unobserved during preparations. Jenkins recounted the evening's timeline. The arrival of guests at 7, the game commencing at 8, the toast at past. Sir Reginald seemed in high spirits, sir. Jovial, even. "Jovial?" Poirot echoed, filing it away. "And the guests? Any quarrels before the fatal hand?" Inspector Graves and Sir Reginald exchanged words about an old case, sir. Nothing new. And young Master Arthur? He was quiet, withdrawn. Poirot nodded, his grey cells assembling the pieces. Returning to the conservatory, he faced the suspects one by one, his questions probing like a surgeon's scalpel. To Lady Victoria. "Madame, you poured the drinks. A wifely duty or something more?" Her eyes flashed. "A courtesy, Monsieur Poirot. Reginald trusted me implicitly." "Trust," Poirot mused, "is a fragile card in such a game." Thorne's alibi was next. "I stepped out briefly, my cigar case. But the decanter was in plain view." Elaine's gaze met Poirot's unflinchingly. "I was absorbed in the cards. Secrets? We all have them. But murder? Absurd." Graves' grunt shifted. Alliances unspoken, forming in glances. The manor seemed to hold its breath, the weight of impending revelations hanging heavy. Outside, the mist parted slightly, revealing the winding drive, but escape from suspicion was impossible. Poirot's arrival had shifted the board. Now, the real play began, with each suspect a potential pawn or king. What secrets would the afternoon unearth? The question lingered, drawing the web tighter around the guilty heart. Chapter 3. Shadows of the Past. The library of Blackwood Manor was a sanctuary of knowledge, its towering shelves groaning under the weight of leather-bound tomes on criminology, law, and the arcane arts of detection that Sir Reginald Blackwood had mastered over his storied career. The room smelled of aged paper and polished oak, with dust motes dancing in the slanted beams of afternoon light that pierced the tall, leaded windows. The mist outside clung stubbornly to the Sussex hills, lending an oppressive air to the manor, as if the secrets of the previous night were trapped within its walls. Hercule Poirot, his egg-shaped head tilted slightly as he surveyed the room, stood near a massive mahogany desk, his patent leather shoes gleaming against the worn Persian rug. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever his faithful shadow, leaned against a bookcase, his military posture relaxed but his eyes alert. taking in the scene with a soldier's instinct for hidden threats. The suspects had been summoned, one by one, to this literary haven for Poirot's initial interrogations, a process he approached with the precision of a chess master contemplating an opening gambit. The atmosphere was charged, the silence broken only by the faint ticking of a carriage clock on the mantel and the occasional creak of the manor settling. Poirot had requested privacy, and the constables, under Inspector Graves' grudging orders, had withdrawn to guard the drawing-room's crime scene. The servants, too, kept their distance, though Jenkins lingered near the door, his silver hair catching the light as he awaited further instructions. The weight of Sir Reginald's death pressed upon the household, and each suspect's entrance into the library felt like a curtain rising on a new act of a grim play, their faces masks of varying composure, their secrets coiled like springs beneath the surface. First to face Poirot was Lady Victoria Black.
Monstrous!
Poirot, seated behind the desk, his fingers steepled, regarded her with a gaze that seemed to pierce through flesh to the soul.
Madam, Hercule Poirot does not suggest, yet, but let us speak plainly. Your husband was a man of control, n'est-ce pas? The finances, the estate, the very rhythm of this household moved to his command. Did such control ever chafe? Did someone, perhaps even you, seek freedom from his iron grip? Lady Victoria's lips parted, a flush creeping into her pale cheeks. Reginald was a tyrant in his way, she admitted, her voice softening, as if confessing to a priest rather than a detective. He managed our accounts with a scrutiny that bordered on obsession. Every shilling accounted for, every decision his to approve. It was stifling at times. But I loved him, monsieur, despite it all. To think I would poison him. She broke off, her hand rising to her throat, a gesture that might have been theatrical if not for the flicker of genuine fear in her eyes. And yet, Poirot pressed, his tone gentle but unrelenting, it was you who poured the fatal drink, no? The whiskey, laced with cyanide, passed from your hand to his lips. Her eyes flashed. I poured for all. The decanter was on the sideboard, untouched until I served the toast. Why single me out? Anyone could have tampered with it before the game began. Her voice rose, a note of indignation breaking through her composure. And Hastings, standing silently, noted the way her fingers twisted the fabric of her dress. A tell of nerves, perhaps. Poirot nodded, his moustache twitching slightly. We shall see, madame. The truth, it hides in the details. He dismissed her with a courteous nod, but his eyes lingered on her retreating figure, as if cataloguing her every gesture for later scrutiny. Next came Edmund Thorne, Sir Reginald's business partner, whose lean frame seemed to carry the weight of unspoken calculations. He leaned casually against the fireplace, one hand toying with his gold pocket watch, its ticking a faint counterpoint to the clock's rhythm. Then Graves, Elaine, even Arthur. His deflection was swift, but Poirot noted the weakness of his alibi. The cigar case, later found in his coat pocket, showed no signs of recent use, its contents pristine. Moments are enough for a practiced hand, Poirot murmured, his fingers drumming lightly on the desk. And your dispute with Sir Reginald, was it resolved, or did it fester? Thorne's smile was thin, almost a grimace. We were negotiating. He wanted proof, I wanted time. But murder? That's not my game. He straightened, adjusting his cufflinks, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease as he left the room. Miss Elaine Hargrove entered next, her sapphire dress replaced by a charcoal ensemble that clung to her lithe frame, her raven hair cascading loosely over one shoulder. She seated herself with a grace that bordered on defiance, her dark eyes meeting Poirot's with a mix of curiosity and challenge. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice a sultry whisper that seemed to linger in the air. "I am a guest here, not a conspirator. Sir Reginald was kind to me once, helped me through a delicate matter in London, a scandal long buried. But gratitude does not make one a murderer." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze unyielding. "And what was this scandal, mademoiselle? The past, it has a way of casting long shadows." Elaine's smile was enigmatic, her fingers tracing the armrest. "A youthful indiscretion, nothing more. A gentleman's indiscretion, shall we say, that threatened my reputation. Sir Reginald ensured it remained private. I owed him, yes, but I had no reason to wish him harm." Hastings, leaning against the bookcase, whispered to Poirot, "She's evasive, old chap. That scandal could be motive, blackmail, perhaps?" Poirot nodded subtly, his eyes never leaving Elaine. "And during the game, mademoiselle, you were at the table throughout. No moment when you might have approached the sideboard." "I was absorbed in the cards," she replied smoothly. "Bridge is a demanding game, and Sir Reginald's rules were strict. I had no
Him like a man, not slipped poison like some sneak. Besides, I brought my own flask, didn't touch his damned whiskey." He patted his jacket pocket, where the flask's outline was visible, a detail Poirot noted with interest. As Graves departed, his heavy steps echoing, Poirot turned to Hastings. "Each tells a story, mon ami, but the truth lies in what they do not say. Motives swirl like the mist outside. Greed, betrayal, revenge. We must sift carefully." The interviews concluded, but Poirot's exploration of the library yielded a discovery that shifted the game's momentum. Rifling through Sir Reginald's desk, he found a locked drawer, which Jenkins reluctantly opened with a master key. Inside lay a handwritten note, its ink fresh and its tone chilling. "I can bear it no longer. My debts overwhelm me. Forgive me." A suicide note, ostensibly from Sir Reginald, but the handwriting was off, the loops too angular, the signature too precise. "A forgery," Poirot declared, his voice low with certainty. "Planted to mislead." But by whom? Hastings frowned. Suicide, with cyanide in front of guests. Preposterous. "Exactement," Poirot agreed, slipping the note into an envelope for safekeeping. His gaze fell to the floor, where a stray playing card lay half-hidden beneath the rug. An ace of spades, its edges creased as if clutched tightly. "The card of death," he murmured, pocketing it. A clue? Or another deception? The afternoon wore on, the library's warmth growing stifling as the suspects reconvened in the dining room for a tense luncheon. The clink of cutlery was muted, appetites dulled by suspicion. Poirot, declining food, observed the group. Lady Victoria's forced calm, Thorne's restless fingers, Elaine's enigmatic glances, Graves' barely contained frustration, Arthur's nervous fidgeting. The air crackled with unspoken accusations, each guest a potential player in a deadly hand. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the quiet, echoing from the garden beyond the French doors. Arthur leapt to his feet, his chair toppling, and the group rushed outside, Poirot and Hastings in their wake. Father was afraid. Last week, he mentioned threats. The group returned indoors, the letter a new weight in their midst. Poirot's mind churned, the little gray cells weaving connections. A forged note, a threatening letter, a misplaced card, a poisoned glass. The net of suspicion tightened, yet the killer remained a shadow among shadows. As the clock struck 4, its chimes a solemn reminder of time slipping away, Poirot addressed the group. "Mes amis, the past casts long shadows, but the present reveals them. Someone here knows more than they admit. The question is, Who dares to play the next card?
The chapter closed with the manor's silence deepening, the mist outside swirling like the secrets within. The ace of spades, tucked in Poirot's pocket, seemed to pulse with significance. Would the next revelation bring clarity, or plunge them deeper into deception? The game was far from over. The web of alibis. The afternoon sun, struggling to pierce the persistent Sussex mist, cast long, wavering shadows through the leaded windows of Blackwood Manor's drawing room, where the air still held the faint tang of cigar smoke and spilled whiskey from the previous night's tragedy. The room, once a stage for Sir Reginald Blackwood's fatal card game, now stood as a silent witness to his murder, its oak-paneled walls and crystal chandelier bearing mute testimony to the chaos that had unfolded. The cards, scattered across the mahogany table, lay untouched, their suits and numbers a frozen tableau of the moment death struck. Hercule Poirot, his egg-shaped head tilted in contemplation, stood at the center of the room, his patent leather shoes gleaming against the polished floor. Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal companion, hovered nearby, his military bearing tempered by a growing unease as the investigation deepened. The constables had withdrawn to the manor's perimeter, leaving Poirot to orchestrate a delicate reconstruction of the fateful evening, a performance designed to unravel the web of alibis spun by the suspects. The atmosphere, with dress absorbing the dim light, took her seat at the table's end, her hands trembling slightly as she lifted the deck of cards, their edges worn from Sir Reginald's habitual shuffling. "Reginald always insisted on bridge," she said, her voice tight, as if reciting a rehearsed line. "He said it sharpened the mind, revealed character. I dealt the hands as I always did for his special evenings." Her green eyes darted to Poirot, seeking approval or absolution, but found only his unyielding gaze. Edmund Thorne settled opposite her, his lean frame tense, his fingers twitching towards his pocket watch, before he caught himself and folded his hands. Miss Elaine Hargrove, her charcoal dress a muted echo of her earlier elegance, sat with a languid grace, her dark eyes flickering with a mix of amusement and wariness. Inspector Graves, his tweed suit rumpled, stood rather than sat, his broad shoulders squared as if bracing for an attack. "This is a waste of time, Poirot," he growled, his voice rough with impatience. "The poison was in the whiskey. Focus on the decanter, not this theatrical nonsense." Young Arthur Blackwood, pale and haggard, took his father's seat at the table's head, his hands shaking as he touched the cards, as if they might burn him. "Father loved this game," he murmured almost to himself. "He said it was a battlefield of wits. I just wanted to please him." His voice cracked, and he looked away, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Poirot, undeterred by Graves' skepticism, paced slowly around the table, his eyes darting from face to face, noting every gesture, every glance. "Let us begin," he said, his voice a calm counterpoint to the rising tension. "Madame Blackwood, you dealt the first hand. Proceed." He gestured to the cards, and Lady Victoria, with a visible effort, began to deal, her fingers fumbling slightly as the cards slid across the table. The group mimed the motions of the game, their hands moving through bids and plays, as Poirot observed, his mind a silent word fault, but Poirot merely nodded. his expression unreadable. Hastings, standing near the sideboard, whispered to Poirot. "Both had opportunity, old chap. The decanter was right there, unguarded for those moments." "Exactement," Poirot murmured, his eyes fixed on the table. "But opportunity is not motive. Let us continue." He turned to Arthur, whose hands trembled as he laid down a card. "Monsieur Blackwood, your father threatened to disinherit you, did he not? Gambling debts, a wayward life, such things weigh heavily on a son." Arthur's face flushed, his voice rising in protest. "Yes, he was angry, said I'd squandered my future, but I loved him. I'd never harm him, not for money or anything else." His eyes darted to the others, seeking allies, but found only guarded stares. "And that letter I found in the garden, it proves someone else was threatening him." Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. "The letter, oui. The game ends tonight. A threat or a distraction? We shall see." He moved to Graves, who stood with arms crossed, his scowl deepening. "Inspector, you brought your own flask, you say, yet it was found near the scene, containing whiskey. Careless for a man of your experience." Graves bristled. "I keep my flask for my own use. Didn't trust Blackwood's liquor. It's no crime to prefer my own blend. You'll find no cyanide in it, Poirot." His tone was defiant, but his eyes flickered with unease, and Poirot noted the red herring for what it was. A planted clue, perhaps, to muddy the waters. As the reconstruction continued, Poirot's questions grew sharper, his observations keener. He paused by the sideboard, where the decanter still stood, now under police guard. "This decanter," he mused aloud. "Was it refilled during the evening? Jenkins?" He summoned the butler, who appeared promptly, his face pale but composed. "No, sir," Jenkins replied. "It was filled that afternoon by myself, from Sir Reginald's private stock. Lady Victoria poured from it directly for the toast." Poirot nodded, his fingers tracing the decanter's crystal facets. "And no one else handled it? Curious." He turned back to the table. "Choice? Or a calculated one?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, as the group shifted uncomfortably. The reconstruction complete, Poirot dismissed the suspects to their rooms, but his investigation continued. He and Hastings retreated to Sir Reginald's study, a smaller room lined with legal texts and mementos of his Scotland Yard career. There, Poirot examined the forged will discovered earlier, locked in Sir Reginald's safe. The document, dated months prior, left the bulk of the estate to Lady Victoria, with only a pittance for Arthur. But the ink was fresh, the signature too perfect. "A forgery," Poirot declared. "This was drafted recently, Hastings. To secure a fortune, perhaps? Or to deflect suspicion?" Hastings frowned, rubbing his chin. "You're onto something, Poirot. If Victoria benefits most, she's the prime suspect. But Thorne's alibi is shaky, and Elaine's too calm for my liking." Poirot nodded, his gray cells whirring. "All are threads in the web, mon ami, but we must tug carefully, lest the spider escapes." He bent to examine the floor, where a faint scuff mark near the desk caught his eye, a clue, perhaps, of someone's presence during the game's aftermath. As evening descended, the manor's lights flickered, casting eerie patterns on the walls. The group had gathered for a tense dinner in the dining room, the clink of cutlery a hollow echo of the previous night's revelry. Poirot, declining to eat, observed from the sidelines, his mind piecing together the alibis. Thorne's brief absence, Elaine's trip to the powder room, Victoria's handling of the decanter, Graves's flask, Arthur's untouched glass. Each offered opportunity, but motive remained elusive. Suddenly, a gunshot shattered the evening's quiet, its report echoing from the study. The group froze, forks suspended, eyes wide with alarm. Poirot, with Hastings at his heels, led the charge down the hall,
the suspects trailing in a chaotic rush. The study door was ajar, and inside, Edmund Thorne lay slumped over Sir Reginald's desk, a pistol in his limp hand, blood pooling on the blotter. A note beside him read,
Truth. Poirot rose, his voice cutting through the chaos. Mes amis, the web of alibis unravels. Someone here has played a deadly card. But Hercule Poirot will not be deceived. Who among you sought to silence Monsieur Thorne? The question lingered unanswered as the clock struck 9, its chimes a grim reminder of the passing hours. The game had escalated, the stakes now measured in lives. Would the next move reveal the killer, or claim another victim? The manor held its breath, waiting for Poirot's next play.
Chapter 5. Echoes of Betrayal. The acrid stench of gunpowder hung heavy in the study of Blackwood Manor, a claustrophobic room where the flickering gas lamps cast grotesque shadows across the walls, their oak panels absorbing the grim tableau like a silent witness. The body of Edmund Thorne lay slumped over Sir Reginald Blackwood's desk, his once sharp features slack in death, a crimson stain spreading across the blotter beneath him. The pistol, still clutched in his limp hand, gleamed dully, its barrel angled unnaturally, as if mocking the idea of suicide. A hastily scrawled note beside him read, "I killed him. Forgive me." Its ink fresh, and its words too neat for a man in his final moments. Outside, the Sussex mist pressed against the windows, its tendrils curling like fingers seeking entry, while the manor itself seemed to groan under the weight of its multiplying secrets. Hercule Poirot, his egg-shaped head tilted in intense scrutiny, knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers probing the scene with surgical precision. Captain Arthur Hastings, his face pale but resolute, stood guard at the door, ensuring the gaggle of suspects, Lady Victoria Blackwood, Miss Elaine Hargrove, Inspector Graves, and Arthur Blackwood, remained at a distance, their shocked murmurs a low hum in the background. The evening had deepened, the clock in the hall striking a mournful note as rain began to lash the windows, its rhythm a counterpoint to the chaos within. Inspector Graves, his broad frame filling the doorway, took charge with a bark that betrayed his unease. "Suicide, plain as day," he declared, pointing to the note. "Thorne poisoned Blackwood over their business feud and couldn't live with the guilt. Case closed." His voice carried the weight of authority, but his eyes flickered with doubt, catching Poirot's unyielding gaze. Poirot rose, his patent leather shoes silent on the rug, his mustache quivering with suppressed indignation. "No, Inspector," he said, his Belgian accent sharp as a blade. "This is no suicide. The angle of the wound. Here, see?" He gestured to Thorne's temple, where the bullet muttered about damned complications.
Poirot, undeterred, summoned the group closer, his voice commanding despite his diminutive stature. "Mesdames et messieurs, remain calm. We shall unravel this thread. Each of you, account for your movements since dinner." He turned to Jenkins, the butler, who hovered nervously nearby. "And you, Monsieur Jenkins, where were you when the shot was fired?" Jenkins, his silver hair dishevelled, stammered, "In the kitchen, sir, overseeing the clearing of dinner. I heard the shot and came running." His hands twisted together, betraying his nerves, but Poirot nodded, filing the information away. Lady Victoria spoke first, her voice strained but steady. "I was in the dining room, finishing my tea. I heard the shot and followed the others here." Her eyes darted to Elaine, a flicker of accusation passing between them. Elaine, her charcoal dress catching the lamplight, responded with a calm that bordered on defiance. "I was in the conservatory, admiring the orchids.
The shot startled me. I joined the group as we rushed to the study. Her fingers toyed with her shawl, a gesture Poirot noted as deliberate, perhaps masking tension. Graves growled. I was checking on the constables outside, securing the perimeter. Came in when I heard the commotion. His flask, visible in his pocket, glinted as he shifted, a reminder of the earlier red herring. Arthur, his voice trembling, said, I was in the library, looking through Father's papers, hoping to find something, anything to explain this. I ran here when I heard the shot. His eyes were red-rimmed, his hands shaking as he lit another cigarette. Poirot's grey cells whirred, piecing together the alibis, each a thread in the tangled web. He dismissed the group to the drawing room, instructing Graves to post a constable at the study door. Alone with Hastings, he examined the scene further, his gloved fingers tracing the desk's edge. Observe, mon ami, he said, pointing to a faint smudge of blood on the pistol's grip, too clean for a struggle. The killer wiped it, but not thoroughly. And this note, too convenient, too aligned with the
London, I discovered an affair, Sir Reginald and Lady Victoria, before their marriage. It ended when he chose duty over passion, but Victoria never forgave him. I used that knowledge subtly to secure my place here, a form of blackmail, if you will, but not for money, for safety. Poirot's moustache twitched. Blackmail is a dangerous game, mademoiselle. Did you see anything during the card game that suggests Lady Victoria's guilt? Elaine hesitated, then leaned forward. I saw her switch glasses during the toast, subtly, when Reginald was distracted by his speech. I thought it odd, but said nothing. Now, I wonder. Hastings, standing silently, whispered, Good grief, Poirot. That's damning. Poirot nodded, dismissing Elaine with a courteous nod. Merci, mademoiselle. Your candour is noted. He next summoned Lady Victoria, who entered with a regal air, her eyes flashing defiance. Madame, Poirot said, an affair with your husband ended long ago. Did it leave bitterness? Enough to poison? Victoria's face paled, her hands clenching. Lies! Elaine is a schemer, a jewel thief in her youth, disgraced in London. She's spinning tales to deflect suspicion. Her voice rose, a crack in her composure, and Poirot noted the desperation beneath her words. Yet you poured the drinks, he pressed, and Mademoiselle Hargrove saw you switch glasses. Care to explain? I did no such thing, Victoria snapped, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of panic. I lent Thorne a handkerchief earlier. That's all you'll find of mine here. Poirot's gaze sharpened. A handkerchief, you say? He bent to the floor, where, near Thorne's body, a monogrammed square of linen lay, initialed V.B. in elegant embroidery. This, madame? Found in his hand, as if placed to implicate or to accuse. Victoria stammered. I lent it to him during dinner. He was perspiring. Her voice wavered, and Poirot filed her reaction away, a thread in the growing tapestry of evidence. Arthur was next. Investigation took a new turn as he explored the manor's upper floors, guided by Jenkins to the attic, where a hidden safe was rumoured to exist. The attic was a labyrinth of dust and shadows, its air thick with the scent of old wood and forgotten memories. With Hastings' help, Poirot located the safe behind a false panel, its lock yielding to a key found in Sir Reginald's desk. Inside were ledgers, meticulous records of embezzled funds, siphoned from the estate's accounts, with signatures in Thorne's and Victoria's hands. Voilà, Poirot said, his voice low with triumph. An alliance of greed. But did it turn deadly? Hastings marveled. You found the motive, Poirot. Embezzlement. Sir Reginald must have discovered it. Perhaps, Poirot replied, but we need more. The killer is cunning, weaving red herrings to obscure the truth. As they descended, the manor's lights flickered, plunging the hall into momentary darkness. A shadow darted past, a figure, cloaked in the gloom, fleeing toward the back stairs. Poirot gave chase, Hastings at his heels, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous corridors. The pursuit ended in the kitchen, where a back door stood ajar, the rain-soaked garden beyond offering no trace of the fugitive. "Who was it?" Hastings panted, his breath misting in the cold. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A question for tomorrow, mon ami." But the net tightens. Back in the drawing room, the suspects were reassembled, their faces pale in the flickering light. Poirot's voice cut through the tension. "The game grows perilous. Thorne's death was no confession, but a silencing. Someone here fears exposure. Who will break first?" The chapter closed with a thunderclap, the storm raging outside as the manor's shadows deepened. The handkerchief, the ledgers, the fleeting figure, all pointed to a killer desperate to cover their tracks. But Poirot's grey cells were relentless, and the truth, though elusive, was drawing nearer. Would the next revelation unmask the murderer, or lead to another deadly play? The manor held its breath.
Ledgers. Meticulous records of financial transactions that painted a damning picture of embezzlement. The signatures of Edmund Thorne and Lady Victoria Blackwood adorned the pages, their ink a silent confession of a secret alliance born of greed. Poirot, his egg-shaped head tilted in concentration, held the lamp closer to the documents, his gloved fingers tracing the columns of figures. "Voilà, mon ami," he said, his Belgian accent sharp with triumph. "Here is the heart of the matter, a conspiracy to siphon the lifeblood of the Blackwood estate. But did this alliance turn deadly?" Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, frowned at the ledgers. "Good Lord, Poirot, this is explosive. Sir Reginald must have uncovered their scheme, reason enough for murder. But Thorne's dead now too. Was he a partner in the crime, or a victim of it?" Poirot's moustache twitched, his grey cells whirring like a finely tuned machine. "That, Hastings, is the question. The killer weaves a web of deception, but the threads begin to fray. Let us return to the players and see who flinches." He closed the ledger, tucking it under his arm, and led the way back downstairs, the lamp casting long shadows that seemed to dance with the manor's secrets. The rain had intensified, its relentless drumming against the windows a backdrop to the mounting tension within Blackwood Manor. The suspects, Lady Victoria, Miss Elaine Hargrove, Inspector Graves, and Arthur Blackwood, awaited in the drawing room, their faces pale in the flickering gaslight, each a study in guarded apprehension. The drawing room, once the stage for Sir Reginald's fatal game, was now a crucible of suspicion, its oak-panelled walls and crystal chandelier bearing witness to the unraveling drama. The scattered cards from the previous night remained on the mahogany table, the ace of spades a grim reminder of death's presence. Poirot entered, his diminutive figure commanding, despite the grandeur around him, and placed the ledger on the table with a deliberate thud. "Mesdames et messieurs," he announced, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "The game has shifted. These ledgers reveal a hidden alliance, an embezzlement scheme orchestrated by Monsieur Thorne and Madame Blackwood." Poirot nodded subtly, his eyes never leaving Victoria's face as he pressed further. "Madame, the signatures are unmistakable. Your hand, alongside Thorne's, diverted thousands from the estate. Did Sir Reginald confront you? Did he threaten to expose you during the fatal game?" Victoria's lips parted, but no words came. She sank back into her chair, her face pale, her composure fraying like a worn tapestry.
I deny it, she managed, but her voice lacked conviction, and the other suspects exchanged glances, their own suspicions sharpening. Poirot turned to Miss Elaine Hargrove, who lounged in a velvet armchair, her charcoal dress catching the lamplight, her raven hair cascading over one shoulder. Her dark eyes met his with a mix of defiance and curiosity, as if she sensed the game's stakes rising. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said, his tone deceptively gentle, "you spoke of seeing Madame Blackwood switch glasses during the toast. A subtle act, but one that suggests intent. Tell me more." Elaine leaned forward, her voice a low purr that carried a hint of steel. "I noticed it during the game, Monsieur Poirot. Reginald was pontificating as he often did about truth and character." Victoria poured the whiskey, but as she passed his glass, her hand lingered, switched it with another, so quickly I doubted my eyes. I thought it odd, but with the toast and the cards I dismissed it. Now I see it differently. Her gaze flicked to Victoria, a challenge in her eyes, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Victoria's face flushed, her voice rising in protest. "That's a vicious lie! Elaine, you've always been a schemer, twisting truths to suit your ends. You were the one with secrets, not I." The accusation hung in the air, a spark threatening to ignite the room's simmering tensions. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the brewing argument. "Enough, madame. The truth will reveal itself in time." He turned to Inspector Graves, whose broad frame loomed near the fireplace, his tweed suit rumpled from a night of restless pacing. "Inspector, you spoke of
Blackwood," he said, turning to Arthur, who sat hunched, his boyish face haggard, a cigarette burning forgotten between his fingers. "Your debts drove a wedge between you and your father, yet you claim an alibi, telephoning a creditor during the toast. Can this be verified?" Arthur nodded vigorously, his voice cracking. "Yes, I was in the library, on the telephone with Mr. Hargreaves in London. He'll confirm it. I was begging for an extension on my debts. I couldn't have touched the decanter." His eyes pleaded for belief, and Poirot noted the sincerity, though it did not absolve him entirely. The room fell silent, the weight of accusations and alibis pressing down like the storm outside. Poirot paced slowly, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, his grey cells weaving connections. "Let us consider the red herrings," he said, his voice a calm anchor in the storm. "The threatening letter found in the garden, signed by none. Its words, 'The game ends tonight,' suggest blackmail. I believe it was written by Monsieur Thorn, pressuring Sir Reginald to conceal their embezzlement. But Thorn is dead, silenced before he could confess or betray his partner." Hastings gasped. "You mean Victoria and Thorn were in it together, and she killed him to keep him quiet?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "But we must also consider the handkerchief, initialed V.B., found in Thorn's hand. A clumsy attempt to implicate Madame Blackwood, or a genuine clue dropped in haste." He turned to the group, his voice rising with authority. "The fatal game was not cards, mes amis, but blackmail. Sir Reginald held secrets over each of you, debts, scandals, betrayals. One among you orchestrated this tragedy to protect your own hand. Who will fold first?" The question hung in the air, the suspects' faces a gallery of fear and defiance. Lady Victoria's composure cracked, her voice a hiss. "You have no proof, Poirot. These are conjectures, nothing more." Yet her eyes darted to the ledger, betraying her fear of its revelations. A fleeting figure from earlier remained elusive.
a ghost in the storm. Returning to the group, he addressed them with renewed intensity. The alliance between Thorn and Madame Blackwood is clear. But the question remains, who pulled the trigger? Was it to silence a partner, or to eliminate a threat? The suspects exchanged glances, their trust fracturing further. Elaine's eyes lingered on Victoria, who stared at the floor, her hands clenched. Graves muttered about securing the manor, while Arthur whispered, "It's like a nightmare. When will it end?" Poirot's voice cut through the tension. "It ends when the truth is laid bare. Tomorrow we shall reconvene, and the little grey cells will reveal the killer's hand." He dismissed the group, their footsteps heavy as they retreated to their rooms, the manor's corridors echoing with the weight of their secrets. Alone with Hastings, Poirot examined the ledger again, his lamp casting stark light on the damning figures. "This is motive, Hastings," he said. "But the execution, poison, a gunshot, suggests a mind both cunning and desperate. We must find the final piece." Hastings nodded, his face grim. "Victoria's the key, isn't she? The glass switch, the handkerchief, the ledger, all point to her." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his eyes narrowing. "But the killer may yet surprise us. The game is not over." As they descended to the drawing room, the storm raged outside, lightning illuminating the manor's towers like a beacon of judgment. The hidden alliance had been exposed, but the killer's identity remained a shadow, lurking just beyond reach. Would the morning bring clarity, or another deadly play? The manor's silence was deafening, its secrets poised to unravel. Chapter 7. Threads Unraveling. Dawn broke over Blackwood Manor with a reluctant glow, the persistent Sussex mist thinning to reveal the rolling hills in muted shades of grey and green. The storm of the previous night had subsided, leaving behind a damp chill that seeped into the manor's ancient stones, as if the house itself mourned the bloodshed within its walls. The drawing room, once a stay, Graves and Arthur Blackwood sat in a tense semicircle, their faces pale, their eyes darting with suspicion and fear. The morning light filtered through the leaded windows, casting intricate patterns that seemed to mirror the tangled web of lies Poirot was unraveling. The ledgers found in the attic, detailing Thorn and Lady Victoria's embezzlement, lay on the table like an accusation, their pages open to reveal signatures that bound the pair in a conspiracy of greed. Poirot had summoned the group early, his voice cutting through the manor's oppressive silence as he began. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his Belgian accent precise and commanding. "The threads of this mystery are unraveling. The fatal game was not merely cards, but a dance of deception, poison, blackmail, and now a second murder. Today we shall see who holds the final card." Lady Victoria, her black mourning dress stark against her pale skin, sat rigidly, her green eyes flashing with defiance. "Your accusations are baseless, Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice sharp but trembling at the edges. "You brand me a thief and a murderer without proof. I poured the whiskey for all. Why would I single out my husband?" Her hands clutched the arms of her chair, her knuckles white, but Poirot noted the faint tremor in her fingers, a sign of strain beneath her polished facade. Poirot raised a gloved hand, silencing her. "Madame, let us speak of proof." He produced the shattered whiskey glass from the crime scene, now sealed in an evidence bag by the constables. "This glass, from which Sir Reginald drank his fatal toast, bears fingerprints, yours alone on the rim. Curious, no? The others' prints are smudged, as if wiped, but yours remain clear. Did you forget to erase your own mark in your haste?" Victoria's face flushed, her lips parting in protest. "Absurd. Anyone could have handled it during the game. The servants, the guests, why focus on me?" Her voice rose,
a note of desperation creeping in, and Hastings, standing by the fireplace, whispered to Poirot, "She's cornered, old chap. That's a damning clue." Poirot nodded subtly, his eyes never leaving Victoria. "And then there is this." He produced the ace of spades, found in Thorne's pocket.
Deceptively gentle. "You observed Madame Blackwood switch glasses during the toast. But there is more, oui? You heard whispers, conversations that hint at betrayal." Elaine's dark eyes met his, a faint smile playing at her lips. "You're relentless, Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low and melodic. "Yes, before the game began, I overheard Victoria and Thorne in the conservatory. They spoke of covering tracks and ensuring silence. I thought it was about their financial dealings. But now—" She trailed off, her gaze shifting to Victoria, who glared back with barely concealed fury. "Lies!" Victoria snapped, rising from her chair. "You're a schemer, Elaine. Always have been. You blackmailed Reginald with your sordid past, and now you turn on me." The room tensed, the other suspects leaning forward, their breaths held as the confrontation unfolded. Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. "Enough, madam. The truth does not require shouting." He turned to Inspector Graves, whose broad frame loomed near the sideboard, his tweed suit rumpled from a night of restless pacing. "Inspector, you were seen near the study before Thorne's death. A witness, a maid, reported you lingering in the hall, close to where the pistol was kept." Graves's scowl deepened, his hands clenching into fists. "I was checking the manor's security, Poirot. Blackwood kept a pistol in his study. Everyone knew it. But I didn't touch it. You're barking up the wrong tree." His voice was rough with conviction, but his eyes flickered to the ledger, as if fearing its secrets extended beyond finance. Hastings whispered, "He's defensive, Poirot. That flask of his was a red herring. But this pistol business, exactement," Poirot murmured. "The flask, planted to mislead. But the pistol, another threat." He turned to Arthur Blackwood, who sat hunched, his boyish face haggard, a cigarette burning forgotten between his fingers. "Monsieur Blackwood, you confessed to forging the suicide note to cover your theft. But your presence in the library during the hand." He turned to Victoria, his voice sharp. "Madame, your fingerprints on the glass, your card in Thorne's pocket, your signature in the ledger. And now, a final piece." He produced a small vial, found hidden in Victoria's vanity during a discreet search of her room, its interior gleaming with traces of cyanide residue. "This, madame, held the poison that killed your husband. Care to explain?" Victoria's face drained of color, her hands trembling violently. "That's not mine," she cried, her voice breaking. "Someone planted it, Elaine, or Graves, or even Arthur. You can't prove it." Her defiance was crumbling, her eyes darting to the exits as if contemplating flight. Elaine leaned forward, her voice steady. "I saw you switch the glasses, Victoria. And I heard you with Thorne, planning to silence Reginald before he exposed you." Her words were a blade, cutting through the room's tension, and Victoria's composure shattered. Graves, stepping forward, added, "I saw you near the study last night, Victoria, just before the shot. You thought no one noticed, but I did." His voice was gruff, but his eyes held a reluctant respect for Poirot's tenacity. Arthur, tears streaming down his face, whispered, "Mother, please, tell the truth." His plea hung in the air, a desperate cry for closure. Poirot's voice rose, commanding the room. "The motive, madame, was greed. You and Thorne embezzled thousands, but Sir Reginald discovered it. You poisoned him during the toast, using the switched glass to ensure his death.
Thorn, your partner, grew panicked, threatening to confess, so you silenced him, staging his death as suicide with the pistol from the study. The Ace of Spades, your card, was a mistake, a desperate attempt to shift blame. Victoria laughed bitterly, a sound like breaking glass. Prove it, Poirot. You have clues, but no witness to the act. Her defiance was a last stand, but Poirot's eyes gleamed with certainty. We shall see, he said softly. The little gray cells do not falter. He turned to the group, his voice a quiet thunder. The threads unravel, mes amis. The killer's hand is clear. But one
Break, or would another clue seal her fate? The game was nearing its end, but the killer's last card had yet to be played. Chapter 8: The Confession's Edge. The drawing room of Blackwood Manor was a cauldron of tension, its oak-panelled walls and crystal chandelier bearing witness to the crescendo of Hercule Poirot's investigation. The morning light, now stronger, pierced the thinning Sussex mist, casting stark patterns across the mahogany table where the cards of the fatal game still lay scattered, their suits and numbers a silent accusation. The air was heavy with the scent of polished wood, lingering cigar smoke, and the faint metallic tang of fear. Poirot stood at the room's center, his diminutive figure radiating authority, his egg-shaped head tilted, his moustache quivering with the intensity of his grey cells at work. Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal companion, stood near the fireplace, his military bearing strained by the weight of the revelations piling up. Sir Reginald Blackwood's poisoning, Edmund Thorne's staged suicide, and now the damning evidence closing in on the killer. The suspects, Lady Victoria Blackwood, Miss Elaine Hargrove, Inspector Graves, and Arthur Blackwood, sat in a tense semicircle, their faces a gallery of dread, defiance, and reluctant hope. The ledgers, the cyanide vial, the Ace of Spades, and the fingerprints had woven a net of suspicion, and Poirot was ready to pull it tight. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant ticking of the hall clock and the occasional patter of residual rain against the leaded windows. Lady Victoria, her black mourning dress a stark contrast to her pale skin, sat rigidly, her green eyes blazing with a defiance that teetered on desperation. The vial of cyanide residue, found in her vanity, lay on the table before her, its glass gleaming like a guillotine in the morning light. Poirot's voice cut through the stillness, sharp and deliberate. "Madame Blackwood," he said, his Belgian accent precise as a surgeon's scalpel. "The evidence is overwhelming. Your fingerprints on the poisoned glass."
Money, madame? No. It was not merely money, it was survival. The ledgers reveal you and Monsieur Thorne siphoned thousands from the estate, a fortune to fund your lavish tastes. Sir Reginald, with his unyielding sense of justice, discovered your scheme. He confronted you, did he not? During the fatal game, he hinted at exposure. Truths revealed, he said. So you acted, lacing his whiskey with cyanide during the toast, switching the glass to ensure his death. Victoria's laugh was bitter, a sound like shattering glass. Prove it, Poirot. You have clues, but no witness saw me poison the drink. You're grasping at shadows. Her defiance was a last stand, but her voice cracked, and the other suspects leaned forward, their breaths held as the confrontation unfolded. Poirot turned to Elaine Hargrove, who sat with a calm that bordered on eerie, her charcoal dress catching the light, her raven hair framing a face of calculated composure. "Mademoiselle Hargrove," he said, his tone gentle but probing, "you saw Madame Blackwood switch the glasses during the toast. Your testimony is the key that unlocks this puzzle. Speak, and let the truth shine." Elaine's dark eyes met Victoria's, a silent challenge passing between them. "I saw it clearly, Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low and steady. During Reginald's toast, Victoria hesitated, her hand moving quickly, too quickly. She swapped his glass with another from the tray, one she'd prepared. I thought it odd, but the game distracted me. Now I see it was deliberate. Her words were a blade, cutting through Victoria's defenses, and the room seemed to contract with the weight of her accusation. Victoria spun on her, her face contorted with fury. "You lying viper!" she cried, her composure shattering. "You've always hated me, jealous of my position, my life. You're fabricating this to save your own skin." Her hands trembled, her eyes wild, but Elaine's gaze remained unflinching, a faint smile playing at her lips as if she savored the unraveling. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the outburst. "Enough, madame. The truth does not require shouting." He turned to Inspector Graves.
"Destroy us all." His plea was a raw wound, and Victoria's face softened for a moment, a mother's guilt flickering before her defiance returned. Poirot seized the moment, his voice rising with authority. "Madame Blackwood, let us reconstruct the fatal game. You poured the whiskey, knowing Sir Reginald's habits, his love for a toast, his trust in you. You laced his glass with cyanide, switched it during the distraction of his speech. But Thorne, your partner in embezzlement, grew weak. He threatened to confess, to expose your scheme. So you acted again, taking the pistol from the study, shooting him, and staging it as suicide. The note, the ace, the handkerchief, all your doing to shift blame." Victoria's eyes widened, her breath coming in sharp gasps. "You can't know that," she cried, but her voice wavered, her defiance crumbling like ash. She paced, her gown swishing, her hands twisting together. "Very well, Poirot," she said at last, her voice low and bitter. "Reginald was a fool, squandering our fortune on his precious justice. Thorne and I diverted funds. It was harmless, a way to secure our future. But Reginald found out, threatened to ruin us. During the game, I laced his glass. It was simple, quick. He drank, and it was done." The room froze. The confession a thunderclap in the silence. Hastings gasped, his hand clutching the fireplace mantel. "Good Lord, Poirot, she's admitted it!" Victoria continued, her voice hollow. "Thorne panicked, said he'd go to the police. I couldn't let him. I took the pistol, waited until he was alone in the study, and shot him. The note, the staging, it was to end it all. But you, Poirot, you saw too much." Her eyes gleamed with a mix of hatred and resignation, her shoulders slumping as the fight drained from her. Poirot nodded, his expression somber but satisfied. "The little grey cells, madame, they see what others miss. The handkerchief, dropped in haste, the ace, a clumsy misstep, the vial—" Your Poirot on the back, his face alight with admiration. "Brilliant, old chap. The way you pieced it together, fingerprints, cards, that vial. How did you know?" Poirot's eyes twinkled, his moustache curling with a faint smile. "The little details, mon ami. The game revealed all. Hesitations, glances, the weight of guilt in a trembling hand. Hercule Poirot observes, and the truth follows." But a shadow lingered in his mind. As the suspects dispersed, Poirot lingered in the drawing room, his gaze falling on the scattered cards. A twist emerged. Arthur's confession about the forged suicide note had been a distraction, not a crime. "I planted it to cover my theft," he had admitted earlier, "but I meant no harm." His innocence in the murders was clear, but Poirot wondered, had all secrets been unearthed? The manor's silence seemed to whisper of hidden depths.
of shadows yet to be dispelled. As Victoria was led away, her footsteps echoing in the hall, Poirot turned to Hastings. "The case is solved, mon ami, but the heart of Blackwood Manor still holds its breath. Let us ensure no other cards remain unplayed." The morning light grew stronger, illuminating the room, but the air remained heavy with the echoes of betrayal. The confession had closed one chapter, but the game's final ripples lingered, hinting at truths yet to be fully revealed. Chapter 9. Loose Ends Tied. The late morning sun finally breached the thinning Sussex mist, bathing Blackwood Manor in a pale golden light that seemed to cleanse the oppressive gloom of the past 2 days. The drawing room, once the stage for Sir Reginald Blackwood's fatal card game, now stood as a quiet testament to the resolution of a grim mystery. The oak-panelled walls, adorned with stern ancestral portraits, reflected the light in muted tones, while the crystal chandelier cast delicate prisms across the mahogany table, where the scattered cards, symbols of deception and death, lay untouched. Hercule Poirot, his egg-shaped head tilted in quiet satisfaction, stood near the fireplace, his patent leather shoes gleaming against the Persian rug. His moustache quivered faintly, a sign of his grey cells left a void in the room, her commanding presence replaced by a heavy silence. The ledgers, the cyanide vial, the ace of spades, and the damning fingerprints had woven a net that ensnared her, but Poirot's methodical mind sought to tie every loose end, ensuring no thread of the mystery remained unaccounted for. The air was lighter, the scent of cigar smoke and spilled whiskey fading, replaced by the faint aroma of fresh coffee served by Jenkins, the butler, whose silver hair and stooped posture belied his steadfast loyalty to the household. Poirot clapped his hands softly, drawing the group's attention. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his Belgian accent precise and resonant, "the fatal game is concluded. Madame Blackwood's confession has illuminated the truth. Poison for Sir Reginald, a bullet for Monsieur Thorn, all to protect a scheme of embezzlement. But Hercule Poirot does not rest until every detail is resolved. Let us clarify the shadows that remain." He turned first to Arthur Blackwood, whose boyish face was etched with grief, his eyes red-rimmed from tears shed for both his father and his mother's betrayal. "Monsieur Blackwood," Poirot said gently, "your forged suicide note, intended to cover your petty theft, was a red herring that misled us briefly. But your alibi, telephoning your creditor during the toast, clears you of the poisoning. And your presence in the library during Thorn's murder absolves you there too. You are innocent of these crimes. Oui?" Arthur nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot. I stole from Father's desk small sums to pay my debts. I wrote that note to make it seem he was troubled, to divert attention. But I never meant harm. I loved him." His hands trembled as he lit a cigarette, the smoke curling like a ghost of his shame. "And Mother, I can't believe she did this." Poirot's eyes softened, a rare glimpse of compassion. "The heart, it is a heavy burden, mon ami, but you are free of this guilt." He patted Arthur's shoulder, a gesture that steadied the young man, who managed a weak nod of gratitude. Next, Poirot addressed reclaiming his dignity. Poirot turned to Miss Elaine Hargrove, who sat with a quiet grace, her charcoal dress catching the sunlight, her raven hair framing a face of enigmatic calm. "Mademoiselle," he said, his eyes narrowing slightly, "your role in this drama was pivotal. Your testimony about the glass switch, your overhearing of Victoria and Thorn's whispers, these were the keys that unlocked the truth. But your past, this scandal you used to secure your place here, was it truly blackmail or a bluff?" Elaine's smile was faint, almost wistful. "A bluff, Monsieur Poirot," she admitted, her voice low and melodic. "My scandal was real, a youthful indiscretion in London, hushed up by Sir Reginald's kindness. I hinted at knowledge of his and Victoria's affair to gain entry to this household, seeking refuge from my past. But I never demanded money, only safety. When I saw Victoria switch the glasses, heard her plotting with Thorn, I knew I had to speak." Her eyes met Poirot's, unflinching, and he nodded, satisfied with her candor. Hastings, leaning closer, whispered, "She's clever, Poirot. Played her part well, but kept her own secrets clean." "Exactement," Poirot murmured. "A player who knows the game, but not the killer." He stepped to the center of the room, his voice rising with authority. "Let us resolve the final threads. Madame Blackwood's confession confirms her crimes. The poison in Sir Reginald's glass, administered during the toast to silence his discovery of her embezzlement. The bullet in Thorn's head, staged as suicide to eliminate a wavering accomplice. The pistol taken from Sir Reginald's study was wiped clean, but the handkerchief, initialed V.B., was a mistake, dropped in her haste. The ace of spades, planted to implicate Thorn, was another error, linking back to her hand in the game. He produced the card, holding it aloft like a talisman. The game revealed her, mes amis. Her hesitations, her glances, her insistence on pouring the drinks, all betrayed her guilt. The ultimate wager.
Madame Blackwood lost because she underestimated the power of observation. Justice, mes amis, is undefeated. The room exhaled, the tension easing like a storm passing. Jenkins entered, his tray of coffee trembling slightly, and offered cups to the group, a small gesture of normalcy. Elaine accepted hers with a nod, her eyes lingering on Arthur, who managed a weak smile. Graves sipped his coffee, his flask forgotten, while the constables outside prepared to escort Victoria to the village. But Poirot's mind lingered on a final detail. He had returned to the study earlier, examining the pistol cabinet, and found a faint smudge of powder on the lock. A trace of makeup, perhaps, matching Victoria's shade. It confirmed her access to the weapon, tying another thread. "The little details, Hastings," he said softly as they stepped into the hall. "They are the stitches that hold the truth together." Hastings clapped him on the back, his face alight with admiration. "Another triumph, Poirot. You saw through the fog, fingerprints, cards, that vial. Brilliant work." Poirot nodded, his eyes distant. "Yet, mon ami, the manner whispers still. Have we truly heard all its secrets?" He glanced at the staircase, where Victoria's footsteps had faded, her confession echoing in his mind. The forged will, the threatening letter, the planted flask, all resolved, but a faint unease lingered, as if the game had one last card to play. As the group dispersed, Elaine and Arthur lingered, their conversation soft, their shared grief forging a bond. "You'll manage the estate now, Arthur," Elaine said gently. "Make it your own, not your father's shadow." Arthur nodded, his voice steadying. "I'll try. With your help, perhaps?" His eyes held a spark of hope, and Elaine's smile was a quiet promise. Poirot watched them, his heart warmed by their resilience. "The young, they find light in darkness," he murmured to Hastings, "but we must ensure no shadows return." He turned to the drawing room's windows, where the sun now shone brightly, the mist nearly gone. The manor's grandeur was restored, its secrets laid bare, or so it seemed. The chapter closed with the sound of police vans rumbling down the drive, their engines a low growl as stones bathed in a golden glow that seemed to restore a semblance of peace to the beleaguered estate. The drawing room, once the stage for Sir Reginald Blackwood's fatal card game, now lay quiet, its oak-paneled walls and crystal chandelier reflecting the light in soft prisms across the mahogany table. The scattered cards, symbols of deception and death, remained untouched, a silent testament to the unraveling of a grim mystery. Hercule Poirot, his egg-shaped head tilted in quiet contemplation, stood near the French doors, his patent leather shoes gleaming against the polished floor. His mustache quivered faintly, a sign of his gray cells settling after their relentless pursuit of truth. Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal companion, leaned against the sideboard. His military bearing relaxed, but his eyes still alert, scanning the room as if ensuring no shadows lingered. With Lady Victoria Blackwood's confession secured and her arrest imminent, the manor exhaled a collective sigh, yet a subtle unease whispered in the air, as if the house questioned whether all its secrets had been fully laid bare. The suspects, Miss Elaine Hargrove, Inspector Graves, and Arthur Blackwood, had dispersed to various corners of the manor, their presence no longer required in the drawing room. The constables, under Graves' gruff command, prepared to escort Victoria to the village jail, their boots echoing on the gravel drive outside. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and fading roses from the garden, a stark contrast to the heavy pall of cigar smoke and spilled whiskey that had dominated the previous days. Jenkins, the butler, moved silently through the room, clearing coffee cups with a deference that belied the turmoil he had witnessed. The manor's grandeur was slowly returning, its elegance reclaiming the space where death had held sway. Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice low and reflective. "Mon ami, the fatal game is concluded. Madame Blackwood's confession, her poisoning of Sir Reginald, her murder of Thorne, has brought justice to Blackwood Manor. Yet, in the tradition of the great detective, we must ensure every thread is tied, every shadow dispelled." His eyes scanned the pistol cabinet. Its lock, bearing a faint smudge of Victoria's makeup, stood open, the weapon long since bagged as evidence. But Poirot's gaze fell to a small card box on the desk, its lid slightly ajar, a detail overlooked in the chaos of Thorne's death. With gloved fingers, Poirot opened the box, revealing a hidden compartment beneath a false bottom. Inside lay a bundle of receipts, their dates recent, detailing payments to a discreet London firm known for handling sensitive financial matters. The receipts, signed by Sir Reginald, confirmed the embezzlement scheme, with notes in his meticulous hand. Victoria and Thorne, funds diverted, confrontation imminent. The discovery was a final nail in Victoria's coffin, proof that Sir Reginald had been closing in on her scheme, providing the motive for his murder. "Voilà," Poirot said, his voice low with triumph. "The final piece, mon ami. Sir Reginald was not merely suspicious. He had evidence, ready to present to the authorities. This box, hidden in plain sight, seals Madame Blackwood's fate." Hastings marveled, rubbing his chin. "Good Lord, Poirot, you've done it again. How did you know to check the card box?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "The little grey cells, Hastings. They notice what others overlook. The box, a relic of Sir Reginald's love for games, was too prominent to be innocent. It whispered of secrets." He tucked the receipts into an envelope, handing them to a constable who entered, to report that Victoria was ready for transport. As they returned to the drawing room, Poirot addressed the remaining players in this grim drama. Arthur Blackwood sat on a velvet sofa, his boyish face etched with grief, but showing a flicker of resolve. Elaine Hargrove stood near the French doors, her charcoal dress catching the sunlight, her raven hair framing a face of quiet strength. Inspector Graves lingered by the sideboard, his tweed suit rumpled, but his posture straighter, as if unburdened by the resolution of the case. "Monsieur Blackwood," Poirot said gently, approaching Arthur, "the estate is now yours. Your father's legacy, though tarnished by betrayal, rests in your hands. You have vowed reform, let it be so." Arthur nodded, his voice steadying. "I'll make it right." Her hand brushed Arthur's, a gesture of solidarity that warmed the room's somber air. Graves, adjusting his flask in his pocket, approached Poirot with a rare nod of respect. "You've got a sharp mind, Poirot. I doubted you, but you've proved me wrong. Scotland Yard could learn a thing or two from those grey cells of yours." His gruff voice held a grudging admiration, and he extended a hand, which Poirot shook with a courteous nod. "The Yard has its methods, Inspector," Poirot said, his moustache curling. "But justice, it is universal. Hercule Poirot is merely its servant." He stepped to the French doors, gazing out at the garden, where the roses, damp from the rain, gleamed in the sunlight. "The fatal game was one of trust betrayed, mes amis. Madame Blackwood played for greed, but she underestimated the power of observation. The little grey cells, they do not fail." The group fell silent, the weight of resolution settling over them. The constables' vans rumbled outside, their engines a low growl as they prepared to take Victoria to face trial. Her confession had laid bare her crimes, the cyanide-laced whiskey that killed Sir Reginald to silence his discovery of her embezzlement, the pistol shot that ended Thorne's life to prevent his betrayal, the forged will, the planted flask, the threatening letter, all red herrings resolved by Poirot's relentless logic. The receipts, now in police hands, ensured her conviction, a final testament to Sir Reginald's unyielding pursuit of justice, even from beyond the grave. As the vans departed, their tail lights fading into the distance, Poirot and Hastings prepared to leave. The Manor's staff gathered in the hall, Jenkins at their head, offering quiet thanks for the restoration of order. The air was lighter, the scent of roses mingling with the promise of renewal. Arthur and Elaine stood together, their silhouettes framed against the garden, a tableau of hope amidst the tragedy. Hastings clapped Poirot on the back, his face alight with admiration. "Another triumph, old chap. You saw through the mist, literally and figuratively. The cards, the vial, those receipts, brilliant work." Poirot's eyes twinkled, his voice soft but firm. "The truth
Betrayed, and justice restored. As the car wound through the countryside, the mist fully lifted, revealing the rolling hills in their autumnal glory. Poirot leaned back, his hands folded, his mind already turning to the next puzzle. "In every game there is a winner," he murmured, "and justice, mon ami, is undefeated." The manor faded into the distance, its secrets buried, at least for now, in the annals of Hercule Poirot's triumphs.